Hello everybody and welcome to Macro Talk. It's Tuesday evening, 9 o'clock, November the 19th, according to my notes, which are seldom ever wrong. And tonight we're talking about the 12 main reasons that we take disappointing photographs in the studio. We talked about something similar about a year ago. Might have been longer, can't remember. But this is really for the newcomer, or a review for those of you who have forgotten. But we'll go over the top 12 things that get between you and nice sharp studio pictures. So we're talking primarily about focus stacked stuff. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Thursday, we have something completely different. I am doing my first live demo with the big microscope. And it's going to be a fun thing that I've wanted to do for some time now. It's going to be it's about crystals. While we talk, actually, if you don't mind terribly, I'm going to show you some of those pictures of which I speak, because you've probably already seen them in the blog post if you saw it yesterday. But these are all, well, I'll show you all of them, I guess. I'm opening seeds when I should be opening crystals. I have had seeds on the mind lately. I can't tell you why. It's a secret thing, but hang on. I'm getting there. Too many buttons to press. Nope. That's coming next, though. There it is. Okay, good. We're into pictures now. So we're talking about crystals, but there's something I've come up with that's new to me. Anyway, I've never seen it done before, never heard about it being done. But it's a new technique that is a lot of fun. You don't need a microscope for it. It would help, and you certainly don't need a compound microscope or a big thing like I've got. Just any old microscope will do. But I'm going to show you something really, really cool that will make not only great pictures but great video. So if you have any interest at all in getting creative with your art, this just might be the Thursday for you, and you're going to get to see all of this in real time as I do it on the microscope. These are all crystals I took in the last few days for that for very purpose, for that video. Some of them are really bizarre. Can you imagine how complicated the chemical is that makes that kind of cookie looking thing? Amazing. I think there's one or two more. Look at this one. Isn't that strange? Looks like somebody in green goggles walking along the street in the fall with a fur coat on. Why the green goggles or the aerial, I don't understand, but there you go. That's what we're going to be doing on Thursday, and there are so many cool things to show you. Just come and plan to stay for a while. I think there's one more. Yeah, this is kind of bizarre. Probably recognize that chemical though. And that is it. This is one of my favorites because it takes hours to look at it, because the closer you look, the more there is to see. All these millions of shapes in there. Absolutely fantastic. Anyhow, that is what we're going to be doing on Thursday, and it's going to be fun, I promise. So Saturday we have a 10 o'clock per Zoom. I've completely forgotten what I'm going to be talking about, but it's going to be something interesting, I hope. And come to think of it, I'll be talking something about these fascinating bellows, the most complicated set of bellows I've ever seen in my life. Thanks to Paul Daly for sending this to me. This is a Kenlock bellows system that has about 97 degrees of freedom for all the various different parts. It twists and turns and tilts and shimmies, and it's very complicated. It's going to be a lot of fun to take pictures with. So I'll talk about that some on Saturday. Maybe still talking about it on Sunday, come to think of it. I'll also be doing an update of a couple of things and some introductions, the usual stuff. It'll be great. Saturday at 12:30 we have Tangent. I see Larry's in the house. Welcome, Larry. And I'm not quite sure what we're doing. I put in a couple of suggestions just in case you run out of things to talk about, but I wanted to show a couple of the gadgets that I invented last week. I invented a cross-polarizing gadget for my new microscope. I did. I should have pulled it out to show you guys, but it's really nifty. It's got a little drawer that puts a polarizer in the light field thing. Yeah, it's great. It works. We're only about 1 week away from me dropping the next Lester Lefkowitz video. That's volume 2 of the interview that we did. It's funny and it's informative and it's just a good hour and a half of fun. So that will be out, I think it's the week after Thanksgiving. Pretty sure that's when it is, and that's next week. All right, how are you doing on the competition? You have a month and a half left. You have until the end of December. 3 photographs, anything you want, so long as it's a macro subject. And we have got prizes now just hanging out the windows. Lenses, holidays, macro photography holidays in Arkansas, which is a state in America. What else? Suitcases full of color corrective equipment. Look at that. And tripod heads. Yep. If you've never taken a picture before, you need to take 3 before the end of December and send them to me. I'm trying to think of a way to fairly and properly, that's not the right word. I'm trying to think of a way to split up the competition a bit so everybody who enters has a crack at getting a prize. So maybe there'll be if you've only entered 1 or 2 total, yeah, we'll do that. I'll come up with something like that and I'll announce it next time. Okay, so what else? That's it really. Lester's going to be judging it with me. Those of you who want to know about the Shibuya lenses, the possibly competitor to the Mitutoyo, these are the ones I think that We Macro is selling on their website. The company's name is Shibuya. They're out of Japan, and I've spoken to them. I've spoken to them a couple of times. I asked them if they'd be kind enough to let me have a hold of a couple of their lenses for a while to do a review, just because we can't afford to buy lenses, and I'd send them back, and everything would be great. And they said no, thank you. So fine. Then a friend of mine offered to lend me one, but that was from Greece, and it would probably cost a fortune to get it here and back and everything. And then Shibuya got in touch with me and said that they were rethinking the whole thing. So it looks like I'll probably get a chance to properly review maybe 2 of their lenses. And that will be very, very good, because a lot of people are interested, because there are people who cannot even consider taking up this hobby with the microscope, with the objectives, prices that Mitutoyos are going for. Okay, that wasn't a good sentence. A lot of people would be very welcoming of a chance to buy a cheaper lens that had similar functions. Now, comparing the two is not what I'm going to do. You can't compare a $600 lens to a $1,300 lens, because they're made differently and they're designed to do different things. And when we use them as camera lenses, what I test are not the same things I would be testing if I was using it on the microscope. I don't even have an infinity corrected microscope to use it on. So we'll be using it as a camera lens, as a macro photography high magnification lens, and that will kind of even the playing field. So even though it's a cheaper lens, if it does what we need it to do, then it's still going to get a rave review. If it doesn't, then we'll see. It won't. I mean, I'm not saying it won't, I'm saying we'll see. Now, have you ever seen one of these? This is the niftiest thing I have seen in months. It's an LED microscope light. People are paying hundreds of dollars to send their microscope light off to get it reconditioned as an LED thing. But actually, you just buy one of these and you plug it in. It's got a quartz plug-in, runs off the same 12 volts, gives maximum brightness, doesn't flicker, and doesn't get hot. So you can, That's it. That's the conversion. Buy one of these bulbs, $2.39. It's actually very nice color too. Would you like to see? I guess I could show you, couldn't I? Instead of just going on about it. There. No, you can't really see that, can you? But you can see the stuff up in the rafters, which is not very good. I should have hid that. Anyway, what are we talking about today? Yeah, we're talking about quality. It's something that we probably should talk about every time, because at the heart of what we do in macro photography, we're always chasing after higher quality. I mean, do you remember your first few macro shots that you took indoors, manually stacking on a rail, and you were just amazed at how awful they were, or possibly how good it was, and then you learned later that it was awful. But the fact is, it's hard to do. There are a lot of things you have to think about. There are a lot of things that don't normally get in the way of taking a regular photograph, will trip us up. And you have to remember all of these things, or you won't know what the problem is. And if you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it. So the way I do this is at least once every 6 months, we'll run down the list of the most common problem areas. And we're going to do it differently tonight. I'm going to go in reverse order from the stuff that's not quite as important to the stuff that's really crucial. And for each of them, I'm going to tell you the way you troubleshoot the problem. In other words, if you're taking pictures and you look at them and say, these just aren't as good as they should be, we'll help you figure out why. We'll help you look at the picture and decide what's wrong with it and what you need to correct to get rid of that particular problem. If we all did this, excuse me, this thing's irritating me in my pocket. It shouldn't irritate me, it's a check, but there you go. If we look at these things one at a time, and if we understand what they mean, and we're conscientious about correcting problems when they show up, we'll become better photographers quite quickly. It is pretty predictable what's going to happen if you ignore these. So some of them are really pretty basic to all photography, and they still need to be mentioned because it's something that we all from time to time do. Dust, dirt, grime on your lens, or on your sensor for that matter. Those of us who work in the studio will often work for weeks and weeks and weeks without taking the camera and the lens off the rig, without looking at it, without thinking about it. But these things do get dirty, especially if you're in a combined work area where I'm doing other things. So checking the lens, looking for problems inside the lens, on the lens. If it's a microscope objective, be very careful. They have delicate coatings. Mitutoyo microscope objectives are not designed to be cleaned by the user. Did you know that? They're not. If you ask Mitutoyo what's the best way to clean one of your M-plan objectives, they'll say, don't clean it. They'll say, send it to us for $500,000 and we'll clean it for you. But the fact is, you're not supposed to clean them because you can scrape off those lovely coatings and then end up with a bad lens. So you can still blow it off with a blower or use a brush on it. So what you're looking for is specks or smudges or blobs, or if you're focus stacking, worm trails, black squiggles that go across your picture. I know you've seen them. Get rid of them. Clean your equipment, and don't do it just when you see stuff. It's best to get in the habit of maybe once a week is what I do. I go around with a lens cloth and I clean all my lenses that are in active use, and I do my sensor about once every 3 months. Most of the time I can get away with just blowing the sensor off, but sometimes I have to do a wet clean too, but we'll talk about that later. The second is backgrounds. it's amazing how quickly you can destroy a good idea for a photograph with a bad background or a badly thought out background. You know that I have a tendency to replace backgrounds on a lot of my macro shots. That's laziness, pure and simple. That's laziness, because really the best macro shots are the ones that are thoughtfully shot against a good background, something that will look good for your subject, will fit with your composition, be it a piece of colored poster board or something you've got hanging in the back with light shining on it, or an outdoor scene, a photograph. There's a million things that you can do. But if you have a background that's either distracting, or it clashes with the colors of your insect, or it's not well lit, or if it's supposed to be black and it is well lit, all of these things will cause a problem with your image quality. Not in the strict sense of the pixels are messed up, but it will make it look rubbishy. So look for reflective surfaces on your background, uneven lighting. I was taking some pictures the other day in here, and you've got to know this basement is black at night. And it was really dark, and I have a big sheet of velvet material that I hang behind my rig. And as I was setting up a shot, I couldn't help notice out the corner of my eye that my black velvet was shining on one half of it. It was picking up lights from all the way over here at my desk, and you've got to be careful about that, because it doesn't look like much. And in this case, it wasn't enough to actually get into the photograph. But if it had, it would have ruined the photograph. Absolutely. So be very careful with that. Whenever possible, use the flattest background that you can get. Whatever color it is, go with flat. You never want anything shiny. Shiny is just not good in macro photography. All right. Let me see. Something that nobody thinks of, and I never think to tell you guys, because I've done this so many times. Make sure your background is stable. If it's on your work surface, make sure it's clamped or clipped or nailed or glued to the surface. If your background is moving, or worse yet, if it's swaying in the background, you'll see all that on your shots. So make sure that it isn't. Stabilize the background. Okay. Next one up is number 3, lighting, but not. There's going to be several on lighting, but this is just insufficient or uneven lighting. Not enough light or unevenly applied light. Now, the light doesn't always have to be evenly applied from a creative standpoint. In fact, I would say it almost never does. But you can still balance the lighting in a way that it's not obvious, it's subtle, that you've got a bright side and a dark side that gives you depth and lets you see the shape of the thing. Yeah, all that's good, but make sure that your light is not too soft or too bright. It's probably never going to be too diffused. If you can see the subject, it's not too diffused, but it can certainly be not diffused enough. And when it comes to lighting and illumination, one of the times we really make a mistake with this is when we're cross-polarizing. If you're cross-polarizing, you may lose as many, depending on the quality of your polarizer and how crossed your polarizers are, you may lose 4 stops of light easily. You don't lose all of it because of the circular polarizer in your camera polarizing lens, but that's another matter. Not enough light or uneven light will ruin a picture. You know it will. If you've got bright spots or detail that's lost in shadow, you're not going to be able to use it. And definitely, tip here, if you're tethering, which you should be, or if you're looking at the back of your camera, which I guess we'll do, look for clipping, at least the first shot of a series. If you're set up to take a shot, and you take a couple of test shots, don't just look at the picture, look at the histogram. Because if the histogram shows that you're clipping at either end, too many brights or too many darks, you're going to take a big long stack of pictures that are going to end up being substandard because you didn't get the light right where you needed it. So be sure to do that. Problems with the focus rail. Now, by this I mean usually a manual focus rail that you are trying to advance the camera with or advance the subject with between shots. I did this for many years before I got my first automated rail, and boy, that was a happy day for me when I got that stack shot. Jeez. For the longest time I had used a very cheap, very nasty advancing rail. I can't even remember what, they didn't have a brand name, I don't think, but it was just awful. And if you're moving your subject too much between shots or unevenly between shots, you can have focus banding, where areas of focus are separated by an area of softness, and it looks really obvious and really terrible. The other thing is, if you reach over and grab the knob to twist it, maybe the first 2 times you do it, you're absolutely perfect, and you grab the knob, nothing else, and you turn it and everything's good. But after 150 of them, you are going to knock the camera eventually with your hand. I mean, you can't help it. You just get bored doing that. And when you do, you're going to move the camera, you're going to knock your perspective out, and the stacking program may have problems with it. So the rail is supposed to move forwards and backwards. That's it. When you're taking pictures, it shouldn't be moving anywhere else. So lock it down, bolt it to a piece of wood, and as soon as you can afford to buy one, if you're planning on doing this for more than another week, buy a motorized rail. Buy a $300 Wii Macro or a top-of-the-line Novaflex. Either one, doesn't matter. Though the Novaflex is rather nice. You might want to look at that. But if you have a good rail, then you can leave it alone. In fact, you can leave the room, and you're not going to get that kind of problem. Okay, if you can get yourself, especially if you're doing this by hand, invest in a monitor. It doesn't have to be a very big one, but keep that right where you're sitting and use the monitor to judge the step length. Don't look at the dial that you're turning. That's a useful tip. You'll get used to knowing the depth of field at various magnifications, and you'll know when you've gone too far. Okay, suboptimal camera settings. I still do this today, not infrequently actually. I'll have something on my camera that the last weekend I was shooting a piece of art for a friend of mine, and I had my all my cameras with me, and my stacking camera, I changed every setting in it, everything, and came back and promptly started stacking without changing everything back again. You need to do that. You need to be diligent at least about checking your exposure numbers, just like you're diligent with setting your focus rail to take the right length of steps and everything else. Make sure that your ISO is as low as you can get it and still get exposure. Make sure that your shutter speed is as fast as you can get it and still get light into the camera. If you do all of these things, check your apertures, make sure that you're not shooting at f/22, and then check the automatic stuff. This is the worst thing about modern cameras, is there are some settings that apply a change to your photograph without you knowing about it, and it could be different on every shot. Even in a stack, it could be different. You want to turn all of those things off. Don't let the camera make any decisions at all during a stack, because it could be a nasty surprise. I've been doing stacks that have run over 1,000 images the last few days, and they are definitely not ones you want to mess up, because that's a lot of work. And I did mess one up. You know what I did? I didn't take the card out properly. I thought I'd done it, ejected it, and didn't. And I had some corrupt files and lost a whole big stack because of it. I couldn't even use the ones that were okay because they were somehow connected with it. So you've got to be careful with camera settings and making sure you've got the right numbers. What's the other thing that people do all the time with the camera settings? It's probably, I was thinking probably it was the shutter speed, but you can go really, really low on shutter speed, providing you take precautions, and we'll get into what that is in a minute because it involves vibration. All right, so if you're forgetful, or if you have a lot of different lenses that you like to stack with, do yourself a favor and on the lens itself, if you feel up to this, put a little dot, a white or red or green or blue for that matter, dot of, what's that stuff you put on your nails, or ladies put on their nails? Yeah, that stuff, fingernail varnish. A drop of that on the aperture that you normally stack with for that lens. If you have different aperture choices depending on what you're doing, then maybe use a color code. But it's wonderful to not have to guess, but to just look at the lens. Aha, yeah, right, 5.6 for my EL Nikkor. I've done that with all my lenses, so if I ever sell them, people will be wondering what those dots are for. But it does get you in the habit of looking. All right, what else do we have here? And don't forget, keep your ISO as low as you possibly can. You can push it with the shutter speed if you want to, but don't push it with the ISO. Even though some recent research suggests that with a camera like the Z cameras from Nikon, that you can shoot at 400 ISO and still have basically a clean picture. Hard to believe. I mean, there was a day when 400 was unlikely to yield a good picture at all. Vibration and camera movement. This is normally higher up on the list. I don't know quite why I put it this far down. Vibration kills a lot of our better shots, and it's very hard to manage. If you've ever done this kind of photography, and you know that you're using, let's say, 5 or 10 or even 20 times magnification, everything is magnified 20 times, including movement. And it's very informative. If you have a microscope, it's especially informative to take a cup of water, a little bowl of water, and just put it under the microscope and have somebody walk around your house. You can see the most amazing reactions to people walking through a bathroom at the other end of the building if it's connected to your room somehow. This happened to me this morning when I was trying to fish tardigrades out of pond scum with a pipette. You know what I'm talking about? So I have a little dish of dirt like this that's got tardigrades in it, and I'm under the microscope, and I put in a very fine pipette. The idea is I'm going to suck up the tardigrade with a little bit of water and put it on a slide. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Well, a truck went by probably half a mile from here, a big rumbly truck, and the water just started to vibrate like that, and I'm in a concrete floored basement. So check it out. Find out where the no-go zones are. Classic one is washing machines. Anything that has an induction motor, anything that kind of cranks up as it's getting started. Washing machines, dryers, big appliances like that. They all have a terrible tendency to jerk into life and shake the foundations when they do. Air conditioners, there's another one. So for the longest time, as many of you know who aren't new here, I used to stack only at night because I lived on a road that was fairly busy. So I'd sleep late in the morning and I'd get up and I'd stack all night long because there was much less traffic, and traffic can be really damaging. If you're lucky enough to have a vibration isolation system or a concrete slab that you're working on, you should be fine, but just pay attention to it. You cannot rule it out without actively ruling it out. You can't just say, well, I'm on a concrete slab, so let's move on to the next one. If you have consistently blurry, unclear images, that is one of the things you need to think of. Is is this being caused by an aberration from my lens, or no, your settings are fine for that? Is it diffraction? No, you've got a nice low F number. Don't know what it is. Well, you've got to think of vibration, even if you've spent your life getting the whole basement set up to be solid, because the weirdest things happen. Sometimes you'll be on a slab that will have a pivot point, and if a big enough truck goes by, it'll wobble it. Okay, so vibration, take it seriously. And it's not just the stuff that causes the whole house to vibrate. It's being careless too. If you're sitting at the table doing the stack and then you nudge something, even bumping into the table next to your rig can set up a vibration in that. So be careful. Okay, inadequate stabilization of the subject. This is another one that I persistently have to hold up my hand for. I have a bad habit, or maybe it's a good habit, I don't know. When I pin my bugs and I get them secure, I will put them in a small piece of blue tack. Let me show you. This is an example of some bugs that are ready to photograph. Okay, they're on a pin in a piece of blue tack. When you do that, don't pin it, blue tack it, go over to your stage, stick it down and start taking the pictures right away. If you do, you'll find that very often these things start to move, and as they get further down on their axis, they start to move faster. And the way that looks, if you've got a 500 shot stack, is your insect is going further and further down towards the corner in every shot. Utterly useless set of photographs. All you have to do is put your insect on the stage right where you want it with your lighting and everything, and take a test shot, and then go do something else. I go to get the next insect ready, but then go back over to the camera and take another one and compare the two. If the bug hasn't moved in 20 minutes, it's probably not going to move during your stack, especially if you're using a mirrorless camera like I do. It'll be over in no time. But this week, I had to throw away a seed stack of several hundred shots because I had it on a toothpick. This is how I shoot seeds. I sharpen the toothpicks. Can you see the seeds on the end? They're very, very tiny. These are the Portulaca seeds. No, that one doesn't have one. There it is. See it? The black thing. Right. So these, I don't use a big piece of blue tack. And then, of course, I didn't pay attention. I put one on the stand, started taking pictures, and at the end of the thing, the seed was all the way off the table. So do it carefully, and it won't happen. And even a breeze can tip something if you're teetering it that high up in the air. Use a bigger piece of blue tack and stick the blue tack down hard onto your surface too. If you don't do that, the problems you'll see in your pictures, which should be a really good clue, is either the subject, you see them moving across subsequent images, or the bug seems to be in the same place, but you've got these streaky lines on the side of the picture, or maybe on the top or the bottom of the picture. That's where Xerene or Helicon corrected the moving bug by moving the frame a bit, and it kept moving the frame until it ran out of place to move it, and then it stopped. And that causes these draggy looking things from the side. It's a sure sign that you're not stabilizing your subject before you start your shot. The other thing that you'll see sometimes is ghosting. where if it's a more subtle change, sometimes you'll see the outline of your thing off to one side of it. Just a little faint outline, maybe 1 or 2 shots before it moved. And yeah, watch for those, because they can be often can be fixed if they're minor, but it's best not to get them. If you're comfortable with it, I don't like it because it's messy and it's expensive and it's hard to clear up the Bondic. I like it for some things, but not for mounting my specimens. If you're using blue tack, use a bigger ball and keep it fairly fresh. I mix blue and white blue tack. The blue stuff is by, I forget, the people that make that tape that I use, Gorilla tape, yeah. So it's Gorilla Putty, it's blue, and then there's a white one. Can't remember the name of that one. It'll come to me. But that's the perfect mixture of tackiness and firmness, and they don't usually tip over unless you mount poorly. It's not a bad idea. In fact, it's a good idea. I'd say it was a good idea to your shooting area. If you can close it off, if there's a door you can close, do it. It's amazing how for little insects, even a breeze from air conditioning from in another part of the house can get in through an open door, and it can cause a fair amount of shimmying of wings. So yeah, try to keep yourself isolated. Diffraction is a huge problem, and it's a problem that early on in our macro experience we often don't really realize exactly what's happening, but we see that as our magnification gets higher, usually by using more extension tubes, that our diffraction gets worse. Well, diffraction is simply the interference on the light that is forming your image, the interference that's caused by the light going through a hole, any hole. In fact, you have diffraction that appears in your very best pictures ever. I mean, every picture has diffraction in it because all the light has to go through a hole to get to your sensor. Now, the smaller the hole is in relation to the size of your sensor, the more likely that the interference from that smaller hole is going to make up a larger part of your picture. And that is why we usually recommend to keep your actual F number, that is the F number after you correct for adding extension tubes, to keep that under 20. If you can't keep it under 20, think of other ways to accomplish what you're doing that's causing the F number to go high. This is not something that may or may not happen. If you are shooting at f46 with 1.5 feet of extension, but you're excited because it gets you to 9x, which you've always wanted to shoot at 9x, it's not worth it because the diffraction is going to be horrible no matter what you do. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that we talk about optics, and I said this the other day, but it's worth repeating. When we talk about really, really nice optics, especially microscope objectives, we will describe them sometimes as being diffraction limited. And what that means is that they're so good that any problems that you see using the lens is almost certainly diffraction before anything else comes in. It's saying this lens is so good you won't see any aberrations, any field curvature, any chromatic aberrations, all the things that normally mess with a photograph. You won't see any of those. If you see softening, it's from diffraction, and that's predictable. So if you keep your setup to where your F number is under 20, it probably won't be a significant amount of diffraction in the picture. But when it gets above that, it's terrible. People all the time will tell me that they take their macro lens out into the woods to shoot little tiny things, and they stick some extension tubes on it and crank it up to f32 or f22, whatever they go to, giving you a very high effective F number. The effective F number, by the way, roughly speaking, is simply the magnification plus 1 times the F number on your lens. So if you set your lens to f8 and you think you're good to go, but you've got enough extension on there to give you 4 times magnification, well, that's 4 plus 1, 5, times f8, 40, f40. It's not the f8 you thought it was, it's f40, and f8's fine, f40's way in diffraction zone, so think about that. And it's one of those things. There's no excuse for doing that in the studio, because you're going to think through all of that stuff first. Use that number, the effective F number, every time. Now, Nikon uses the effective F number on its lenses, but it doesn't know when you've added extension tubes, so you need to allow for that. Okay. Stopping down is a pretty okay way to get a little bit more depth of field, sure, but it comes at a high price. So, if you are thinking, if I just pushed this to f32, I'd be able to get it in one shot, that means you probably should be focus bracketing that. You should shoot several shots and stitch them together afterwards. So, focus stacking is always going to be the solution when you're faced with diffraction issues. All right, misalignment when you're focus stacking. On my rig, all my rigs that I've ever had, in the middle of my rig, I put a heavy line. I score it with a knife, and then I fill it in with permanent marker. That is the middle of my rig, and it will always be the middle of my rig, and everything has to travel down that line. And if you're conscientious about it, you'll avoid problems where when the camera is off and pointing out the window instead of at your subject, as you move forward, your subject is going to slide by one edge or the other. Now, it's obviously not all the way by, but the fact that it's not dead on is going to cause the perspective to appear to shift to the camera. And while Zerine and Helicon are fantastic at correcting for size problems, what they're not good at, and will never be good at, is correcting for perspective change. When the perspective changes and the outline of the subject alters between shots, the program doesn't really know what to do with it, so it guesses, and it usually puts something you don't want in there. So keep your rig straight, make a line, stick to that line, make sure everything gets screwed on there. The other place that this happens, and then I'll move on, is those quick release clamps that you use to hold your camera on your rig or your lens, whatever equipment you put on there. It has a screw in the bottom, right? A thumb screw that you can tighten up, and that puts the little shoe on the bottom. There is nothing that holds that straight. On Nikons, if you have a big enough plate that's long enough, like an L bracket, there's an extra pin that will keep it kind of straight. Come up with a way to make sure that your camera is on the quick release plate straight, and double check it at the beginning of every shoot, because it's very easy for it to get nudged to the side as you're putting it on the rig, and if it is, it'll spoil your pictures, and you won't know why, because they'll just look weird. Okay, and also other alignment problems are like alignment problems coming from movement of the rail. If the rail isn't well secured, sometimes it can move as the motor turns. So just look at everything on your rig and make sure that it is straight down the line. Bad optics, optical aberrations of all kinds. Here's one thing that there's just no getting around. The best lenses to use for your focus stacking, be they microscope objectives or enlarger lenses or camera lenses, need to be good quality lenses. Macro lenses are typically fairly expensive because they have to be. They have to be clearly superior instruments. So you're looking for things that have good coatings, that are prime lenses, that they're from a reputable company, they have all the right coatings on them, and they're in good shape, they're new. If you're buying microscope objectives, try to buy the good ones, the apochromatic ones, the ones that are made by a known dealer. And that way is really the only way for you to limit things like a curvy field curvature, which will barrel distortion or pincushion distortion because of the lens's poor design. Chromatic aberration is another one. I won't get into where that comes from, but a good lens will correct for that, so you should have little to no fringing. But I understand that buying the best lens is often a factor of 2 orders of magnitude more expensive than a cheap one. But if you want the best pictures, ultimately you're going to have to get one. I would recommend, by the way, just a tip, if you have a budget for a lens for your macro work in the studio, but you don't have enough to get more than one good lens, some people will just get a set of really bad lenses, like the Amscope finite objectives, which are pretty awful. Buying a set of those instead of spending that money on getting one 5x Mitutoyo is poorly spent money. You can actually get fantastic lenses like the EL Nikkors for $100. They used to be 25, but now they're about $100. But they are fantastic, and they'll give you a wide range of magnification. So get a good lens and keep it clean. By the way, don't drop your lenses on the floor or throw them at people. They're delicate, and they all come separated. The elements will if you do that. They don't take them in the bath either. They're meant for not being wet as well. Not preparing your subject is probably my number one pet peeve. I mean, I think it is both the most enjoyable part of macro photography and the most important. Your subject needs to be inspected, repaired if necessary, cleaned, dried, inspected again, then pinned and posed. That's what I mean when I say preparation. And that also goes for seeds or whatever you're photographing. It doesn't make any difference. It has to be prepared well, or it's not going to be a good picture. I had to come up with a way to, I put them up, a way to clean seeds. I'm photographing several different species in the coming weeks, and I showed you this one. This is a portulaca seed, and the other ones that I'm photographing are much smaller than this. So I needed a way to get a single seed clean. If you've ever thought about that, that's a challenge. How do you exactly clean a seed that small? I mixed a potion together using a little bit of what's the radiation stuff? Blanking. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I've got it written on the bottle. Decon 90. A few drops of this in some clean water, and I put them in a small bottle, and I just shook them for 5 minutes. And then I sucked them out with a pipette and dropped drops of the water with the seed in it on filter paper. And that cleaned and dried the seeds. And boy, the difference in the quality of the pictures when they were washed like that and then promptly photographed, they were 10 times better and showed massive amounts of detail. So taking the time to do a good job of cleaning, posing, all of that. There are no shortcuts, and there are things that you can do to make it way worse. Try to keep bees dry, for example. That's beyond the scope of today, but if there's nothing worse than getting a nice bee, especially one if you bought from overseas and it arrives and you pin it and you're all ready to go and you decide you just give it a quick wash, you'll never get the water out of it. I mean, it'll mat the hairs, it'll look like a dead bee the first time you take its picture, so try to avoid that. Watch my old videos on how to clean stuff, be delicate and be gentle, use tiny, soft brushes, and just take your time. There's absolutely no rush. If there is a rush, just don't do it. Come back and do it another day. But if they're not cleaned, they won't look good. End of story. Post-processing is an amazingly pervasive way for us to ruin our photographs. And I say that kindly. But I see lots of pictures that are really quite good. Maybe not the best you can do, but they're nice. They certainly have a lot of promise. After processing them, they look just shocking. I've done this. We've all done it. I think we've all over-processed pictures because we really want to show those colors and have them pop. Come to the post-processing discussion that we have. It's called After Stack, and we do it every 2 weeks. And it is all about how you do this subtly. The idea is that you shouldn't be able to see a lot of change, but the overall picture just looks better. So we talk about that and go into all the different ways that you can do it. But over-editing, poor stacking, not retouching, leaving artifact or leaving big clumps of dirt, all of these things just kind of add up to a really grotty image. Pay attention to that in your post-processing. If you don't know how to do it, watch some videos, either mine or anybody else's, really. Avoid noise. That is something that I don't think we talk about enough. Make sure that you're illuminating your subject well enough that you're not going to have a lot of noise to deal with. And if you do, try to remove the noise in a good third-party program before you stack the images, because you can imagine what's going to happen if you ask Zerine to stack a noisy picture. It's going to stack the noise too. And you don't want that. You don't want that. So it takes forever. In fact, it takes 2 forevers. If you have a big stack that is shot in a dark room and you know there's noise in there, stop and shoot it again with light, because if you're doing all of this and you have 600 images that all need to be denoised, it'll take you the rest of the day to run them through a program like Topaz. So it's better to just add enough light and be able to use a low ISO and not get noise. Okay, alrighty. Gosh, I only got one more. I'm glad that I'm glad that I had enough time. Jeez. The last one. Putting the bug, putting the subject in the wrong place on your stand in relation to your camera. This is one of focal plane alignment, of how you set up the shot so that when you do your stack, you're going to get everything that you need in focus and nothing that you don't need in focus. And to do that, you cannot just guess and point the camera roughly at the subject and let it rip. This is where the planning of the shot comes in, and so many pictures are ruined this way by having either a full stack or a partial stack where you have legs that are directly on top of one another, which would have been so easy to see if you'd taken one extra step, which is highly recommended. 2 extra steps. The first one is take your bug on its pin under the microscope or magnifying glass, whatever you're using to clean them, and look at all the different angles and decide which angle works best for the bug and the background and the lighting. You'll see it. I mean, it always just pops out, oh, this looks much better, and you can see all 6 legs if that's what you're trying to do, and it'll help you decide where the focus plane should end. But do that, and then before you start your stack, take a test shot and make sure that you actually have the focus properly aligned. Let me tell you what we do, and what it just makes pictures so frustrating to look at, is we forget the tip of the right antenna. So we've got a gorgeous picture with a fuzzy ball at the end of one antenna, or both antennas. Make it even worse, so you can't just borrow the antenna from the other side. Check that your focus plane starts in front of where you want it and ends after where you don't need it. No, I'm going to try that sentence again as well, so that it starts before you need it and it ends when you no longer need it. Still no good. Okay, tough. We're out of time. So all kinds of tricks, getting into the details of how focus stacking can lead us astray and cause image problems. That's a year's worth of discussion, but it can. Read the book, watch the video, and go step by step. Hey, I have checklists that I made a year ago, and I made them as a special gift to my Patreon supporters, and I think everybody got a set of those. I am going to, I'm thinking of just putting them available to anybody who wants one. This is a full set, it's like 7 pages of checklists for everything that you do in the studio. Checklists for before and during and after the shoot to keep your equipment in good shape and to get the best possible pictures. I'm probably going to ask for a little donation. We're a little short on cash here at the big house, so yeah, that's what we'll probably do. Just for a few bucks, and I'll put these things out. If you're a Patreon member and you don't have the set of checklists and you want them, please contact me and I will get you your checklist, because yours is already there as a thank you from me for support. Okay guys, we are almost out of time. Don't forget, on Thursday, I ought to check my messages in case there's somebody left a message saying, hey, your microphone's turned off, we can't hear you. You like to see a seed that I did take time to clean? That's very clean seed. You know what? I'm going to show you one other clean seed while we're here, because I was proud of it. This was the same day I figured out how to keep them clean. Let me see. It was also my favorite seed of this series. Crazy detail in this thing. Yeah, here it is. You've just got to marvel at the color in these things. Almost microscopic little things. I don't know what these blackheads are, but they're a little off-putting, but the rest of it's amazing. Anyway, I don't know why that suddenly became something to talk about, but it did. Thursday, crystals. Saturday, Pazoom and tangent, and that's it. Isn't that enough? I think it is. I know that there's one other thing that I'm going to regret not saying, and I can't remember what it is, so I won't say it, but I'll say it on Thursday. Were there any questions that I didn't answer from last time? I don't think there were, from the QA on Thursday. I went through the list and I didn't see any. Let me see if I can get to... I've been talking non-stop. Okay, and there are loads of messages. Bear with me. Hi, Amy. Hi, Alistair's there as well. Zeno's there. Alan Wall's photography suggestions. Split the competition into magnification levels, i.e. 1 to 5 and greater than 5. Let me think about it. I'll put that one in my head. Paul Daly. Ooh, where does one find those LED bulbs? I'll put a link. China is the short version, but here it's G9service@126.com. You got it? Somebody written that in the chat? G9service@126.com. They're fantastic, and they're super, super bright. If I'd known about them when I was making my my diffuser things, I would have used these instead of the big flat ones. I think these are better. They're great in the microscope, absolutely great. I am going to read, as I always do, all of your messages just because they're interesting and I like to read them. And if there are any questions in here that I didn't get to, here's one. Samuel Cheer. Samuel, I don't remember hearing you hearing your name here before. Welcome, glad you're here. Please come back. Would it not be better to stick your toothpick into some kind of high-density closed cell foam block rather than blue tack? No. Absolutely not. I use high-density foam for a million things. I keep this stuff in boxes around the studio. I use it for everything. Not for putting specimens on. It is too light and it will move. You'll nudge it with your diffuser. You'll nudge it. The wind will move it. I have to have something that is going to stick it to the top of my stage. I hear what you're saying, but the blue tack has proved to be perfect. It's sticky, but not too sticky. It normally, I've taken thousands of pictures for every couple that have flopped like that one did this weekend, but still, I think it's the best choice. Very flexible, and a mountain of that stuff, a mixture of the two different kinds will last me 6 months, a pack of each. But anyway, thank you for the suggestion, and definitely please come back because we're here every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday at 8, Thursday at 2, which is the next time I will see you. So thank you everybody for coming, and I will read your messages, and if I forgot to answer anything, okay, that's it. And Paul wants to be down for a checklist. You know what? I will bring the checklist to the Pazoom on Saturday and distribute it there. And then I'll deal with the stragglers after that. Hope everybody has a great week and enjoys what's left of the nice weather before it freezes. I bet it's already frozen in Maine, isn't it? I shouldn't have said that, David. Sorry. You guys take care, and see you on Thursday. Oh, David Brown, peace out. Oh, Alan, have you messaged the AK diffuser guy? Yes, we had a back and forth yesterday, and I believe that I'll be testing out the new diffuser quite soon. So we're all good. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Alistair. See you next time.